Good morning, everybody. We're the warm-up act for John McEnroe. But it's great to be here. I'm having a fantastic summit and really delighted to be talking to Natalie this morning about what's going on at ServiceNow. We wanted to just start with a quick sort of 30,000-foot view level. The goals in corporate learning is really interesting. So the goals of organizations, of CEOs, is all around growth, and I think recent weeks is only going to sort of exacerbate that need for organizations to be looking to grow. But there's a huge disconnect, right? So in the Gartner survey, only a quarter of HR leaders believe that their HR strategic planning is linked to their business planning process of the business. So like, there's a big disconnect there. But then, you know, the challenge is huge. And for people in this room, the opportunity is very real, it's very tangible, it's very obvious around, you know, there's a big opportunity for corporate learning and development to really lean in and to be a strategic enabler for businesses to grow in the future. We're seeing this at the moment just in terms of demand. Employees are hungry, they're coming towards Emeritus and other sort of providers of various courses, various learning opportunities. So it's just been a very busy period for us in recent months and years. And this is where we wanted to talk a little bit today about ServiceNow's approach is different from other organizations out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some of these stats are really just staggering. And I think we can all agree that the pace of change is never been faster. This 90% of employees needing new skills, I think really just represents the onset of rapid innovation in AI, certainly leading talent management at ServiceNow, so software-based company that's in the business of really being the experience layer on top of so many of our different disconnected and disparate technologies. This is a real opportunity for us. The great news is so many of our employees are hungry for learning, like you said. We've had a lot of our employees go out of their way to engage in emeritus learning, and we are just thrilled with the feedback that we're hearing. Everything from learning more about product leadership, AI innovation, to core leadership skills. So we're incredibly grateful.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. Like, people are coming towards programs and investing in their own skills development, and it's really a big opportunity for organizations to really tap into that and get it sort of tap into that demand which exists. The next kind of just sort of 30,000-foot view level we wanted to highlight was just this disconnect. We know that high-performing learning organizations are more likely to innovate. Burson's done the research, but yet just over a third of C-suite executives are actually committing to investing in learning and development. So it's a big disconnect there in terms of organizations at the C-suite level not sort of taking that opportunity and not seizing it. I'm just curious about ServiceNow in terms of how you've managed to sort of get that broader buy-in outside of talent, outside of L&D. You know, what's worked well, what hasn't worked well in terms of getting that executive buy-in?
What a question. I think this is something that is a perennial opportunity for us. I'm sure I don't have to convince anybody in this room the criticality of learning and making sure that we have the right skills at the right time in the right pockets of the organization to fuel future growth. But I'm not surprised to see the 37% stat of C-suite interest. For us, I would say this has been a very deliberate effort on our part to make sure that we are systematically linking the work that we are doing to our enterprise strategy. This isn't something that's buried in our HR priorities. This isn't something that's a passion project for one or two leaders across the organization. This is something that we really stitched together all the way at the top of the house. So we go through a strategic planning process, as I'm sure every company in this room does. And all the way through those conversations, we were talking about the criticality of and the availability of certain skills, both in our partner ecosystem. So for ServiceNow, we're really interested, as you might imagine, in ensuring that we have the right skills in the market to implement our technology. This is a big driver of our revenue, of our ability to grow. So, you know, one key priority of learning there. And the other second key priority is really around, I think, what most of us can resonate with, which is that opportunity of learning broadly across the organization. Again, making sure that as leaders in AI innovation, as leaders in the tech space, we need to continue to be on the bleeding edge. The only way that happens is if we are like obsessing over that skill development. And so again, we partnered with our executive team to build the case for change, to build the case for really investing in ServiceNow University, which is, kind of our, kind of brand for how we are delivering learning both to our customers and our employees internally. And took that all the way to the board to get funding. And the great thing about that, it wasn't just led by our CHRO. It was a partnership with, again, our CEO and other executives sitting around that table in terms of the criticality. I think that's a key difference maker and something that I think all of us should be thinking about in terms of the opportunity to build that from the beginning. The second piece that we've really focused on in terms of getting this alignment is really around how we are co-creating and constantly checking in on the strategic direction with our senior-most leaders. So think about that layer below the C-suite. We've established what we call our ServiceNow University, kind of task force, for lack of a better word. And this is a group that comes together on a regular basis to check in on what is the strategy, what are the skills that we're going after, how are we going after it, what's the experience, where do we have opportunities to innovate and infuse AI, what are the skills, and what are we seeing in terms of the impact. And so that group is constantly coming together to self-assess and course correct on the strategy. Again, it's not just HR and learning that are constantly driving that. Of course, we are the leader in this space, but is really forging that partnership. And I would say the third thing that we've tackled that is really, in my opinion, critical to getting this deep alignment with the business is obsessing over the user experience and not just aligning on the strategy and the direction, but really how this comes to life for a user. We talk so much about innovating in the space of learning, and I know we're going to talk more about that. But we have, built out what is a day in a life of a sales manager, as an example, who might be engaging in ServiceNow University. What is a day in a life of a senior executive who's going to be engaging? What's a day in a life of, kind of an early in career individual contributor who's sitting in Japan, right? Each of these are unique personas, and I can keep going with what that could look like. But we've really invested the time to stitch out and build out what are each of the experiences in their journey. How can we partner with them to proactively test content, to get reactions on things, so that way all of this is coming to life in a way that is for us, by us, that is built with the user in mind. And I think those three levers, again, C-suite engagement, executive partnership and steering, and again, third, really focused on the user partnership and innovation, have all been really critical to getting this embedded deeply within our business strategy and getting that alignment and support that's so critical.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really something, two things to pick up on there. One is that stakeholder, that executive buy-in, whether indirectly or directly, becomes very visible to everybody else in the organization, that this is a priority for the business. This is not just something which sits on the edges. And we see that as well when we see that senior leaders are engaging and helping shape the direction of learning solutions. Then you see much greater engagement, much greater success. I think that's so important to get right. And that user experience as well. We've all got great apps on our phone to be able to buy flights and to be able to book hotels, but we've all experienced terrible user experiences when it comes to learning. So I think it's just fantastic. Could you maybe bring to life for us a couple of real life examples of that user experience now for customers potentially as well? How are they engaging with ServiceNow University? It'd be good to sort of touch on that.
Absolutely. So happy to share a little bit more about what that looks like. For ServiceNow University, again, our commitment has really been to reimagining the learner experience. We know that learners so often struggle with the time to invest in learning, getting served up generic content that's not relevant to them, not when they need it, and resulting in low levels of engagement. And that's something that, quite frankly, we weren't comfortable with settling with. And so ServiceNow University is really built on that principle of making learning personalized, pertinent to their unique needs, predictive, and really delivered at the right point in time. So that has been our commitment and our guiding principles to how are we architecting all of our learning experiences. When it comes to customers and partners, we're launching this actually next month at our customer and engagement forum, and we're so excited to do it. So we've spent a lot of time building this out. But what I can speak to more in terms of the employee experience that I think is really foundational to how we think of ServiceNow University and really able to fuel this difference in experience is really getting this deeply embedded in two key areas. One is hooking all of this into our unique skills data. In order to have personalized and predictive learning, we need to understand the nuance of that unique person. What are the skills that they're most proficient in? What are the skills that they should be most proficient in as it relates to their job, their career goals, their business priorities? And so all of that information is built in our own system that allows us the ability to harness all of that and make sure that we have a skills-first approach to learning. I'll talk a little bit more about how that comes to life here in just a second. The second area is to have SNU, ServiceNow University, really embedded in each of our talent processes. It's not a static thing that you go to when you have time. Think of ServiceNow University as embedded in every single talent activity. So for example, we serve up learning content really baked into our core talent processes. So an example of that would be, the previous discussion was talking about feedback, preparing for your year-end review, getting ready to have these conversations with your employees. It's at that point in time when a manager is preparing for those discussions or an employee is preparing for those discussions that we're using that skills intelligence data to harness all of that and serve up insights, discussion points, and key learning recommendations to make those points in time even more impactful. So for example, I might have goals around how I'm driving AI innovation. We can use that data to harness, the skills intelligence data we have around what is their AI skills proficiency, what is some suggested learning content for them, what are the things that they're going to need to build greater skill and fluency in to be successful in meeting those career goals, and then serving that up again at the point of time for the manager and the employee to make those experiences come to life.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I think what would be really helpful as well, like we've heard a lot about AI skills.
Yeah.
And they are incredibly important, no doubt, but I think it'd be good to see if you can share, what are some of the other skills that are clearly in demand, both from a customer point of view, but also from an employee point of view as well, because they're probably going to vary, right? In terms of ServiceNow, from a customer point of view, wanting to drive usage of the platform, but employees as well. What are the skills that employees are sort of either asking for to be developed on, or maybe some of your senior leaders as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So of course, AI is the top of everybody's list. But outside of that, for our customers and partners, it's really at making sure that they're fluent in our technology. We need to make sure that they understand the full breadth of what the product can do and the platform. So a lot of that is technical-based learning, but certainly there's other things around that. For our employees, we're also focusing on things like how do we drive greater enterprise collaboration and a true enterprise mindset. We want to make sure that we're building the thinking around how do we function and operate outside of our own individual silos. That's something that we're tackling really head on, as well as things like building even greater learning agility, making sure that we have skill and capability around how managers are being effective managers and leaders. Really this kind of focus on feedback is foundational to so much of what we're doing. So there's certainly technical skills that we're focused on, but beyond that, it's those soft skills around, again, feedback, learning agility, all of the things that we just talked about that are really front and center for us.
I think I'm trying to use the word human-centric skills now, and soft skills obviously form part of that, yeah. In terms of kind of what success looks like to you, our industry is obsessed with measurement, quite rightly, but it's always one of those ones which is difficult to pin down. But, over the months ahead, what will success look like for ServiceNow University?
That's a great question. So, of course, we're looking at things like employee and customer feedback on the overall experience. But most importantly, what this comes down to is skill proficiency. We have real need to ensure that we've got certain skills in certain parts of the business at certain points in time. What we're doing is, again, through our own platform, being able to assess that capability, but also continue to assess that capability. ServiceNow University is not successful if we're not fundamentally delivering on those outcomes. We can have a great experience, we can have all the tools, all the bells and whistles, really beautifully designed, but if it's not actually moving the needle in the skill development, then it's all for naught. And so that is the metric that we are obsessing over, and there's certainly indicators of what that looks like, but that has really been the key focus for us.
So as we sort of start to sort of think about closing out, what other advice would you give to learning leaders that you've learned sort of the hard way over recent months and the last year or so in preparing to launch ServiceNow University?
I think a few things. One is, you heard about it in the previous panel, is constantly keeping an ear to the ground. Just the second that you feel like you've baked in all the hottest and the latest trends and the innovation, it's changing. And the art of the possible is something that we need to continue to be inspired by. So I would say never rest. The second would be, again, making sure that you're getting that business alignment. Like, if we're doing this in a dark corner of a room and delivering what we think is most relevant for the business, then we are fundamentally missing the mark. This needs to be systematically embedded within the core business strategy. And the third thing I would say is really obsess over how you can knit this through every single experience. And so again, how do we make sure that for each of those unique personas, we're simplifying, we're removing the noise, we're joining up the dots as many places as we can, we're embedding it within existing talent processes. It cannot be standalone. It cannot be something that is separate and aside from the things I do in my day-to-day work. It has to be seamlessly embedded. So those are the three things that I would really encourage folks to prioritize as you're really thinking about your next evolution of your learning strategy.
Thanks very much. And maybe can you give a bit of a snapshot in terms of where this might go in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years after the launch?
Yeah, I think we're looking to continue to get even more sophisticated in how we can do all the things that I just talked about. So we talked about the pace of AI innovation. We're using that to, again, proactively scrape data, serve up content, even in how we're designing courses. You have the opportunity to use what was talked about earlier in those feedback kind of scenarios and get real-time feedback on how you're engaging in learning content. But I think for us, it's going to be the richer of skills data that we have, the more and more we can supercharge the capabilities of ServiceNow University. So it's going to be that ongoing evolution. It's going to be, how can we get even more personalized, even more predictive, even more seamlessly embedded within our day-to-day work tools. So I think it's, again, really making sure that we're reaching every learner, getting that adoption, getting the skill fluency that we need, but also constantly obsessing over the innovation and how we can make that even better and more impactful for all of our employees and customers.
That's really amazing. And then sort of my final quick question would be around putting you on the spot in terms of, you'll obviously be a user of ServiceNow University in the future. What specific kind of area are you most looking forward to developing in terms of skills for yourself?
Oh, such a great question. I think for me, I'm excited to build my own skills around, kind of that enterprise strategy and thinking that we talked about earlier. For me, it's all of us, have the opportunity to learn and grow and stretch outside of ourselves, and being able to, again, get a deeper appreciation for every single aspect of the business, how it works, how it functions, how that can help to make me an even more influential and, kind of impactful executive is something I'm really excited to lean into.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Natalie. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.